All right, hello everyone. I'd like to welcome you all to the Bureau of Land Management's virtual public meeting for the grazing flexibilities, range improvements, and restoration to improve Lahontan cutthroat trout habitat in Nevada, draft environmental assessment. We're going to give folks just a few minutes here to join the meeting, and then we'll begin our presentations shortly, so please stay tuned. I do want to note that closed captioning is available by selecting the closed caption icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen if you are using the Zoom web portal or Zoom app on your computer. And again, we'll give it just a minute or so here for folks to join, and then we'll go ahead and get started. All right, again, welcome everyone to today's meeting for the Bureau of Land Management's Grazing Flexibilities, Range Improvements, and Restoration to Improve Lahontan Cutthroat Trout Habitat in Nevada Draft Environmental Assessment. My name is Ali Yamnitsky, and I'm with AECOM, a contractor for the BLM, and I'll be one of your meeting facilitators today. Before we get into today's presentations, I'll go ahead and review our meeting agenda, go through some meeting ground rules and Zoom tips and tricks, and then we'll have some staff introductions before we start those presentations. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So on screen now are our presentations for today. We do have a few that we'll go through. Our first presentation will be from Catherine with the BLM, which will be an introduction to the project. We'll then hear from Nancy with the BLM about the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA, and substantive comments and the timeline for those. We'll then hear from Patty with the BLM about stream types and riparian vegetation. We'll then go back to Catherine for protocol and process. We'll then have a presentation on Lahontan cutthroat trout habitat by Cody with Nevada Department of Wildlife. And then again, we'll go back to Catherine for a presentation on the grazing strategies and flexibilities before we go to Nikki with the BLM for restoration and in-stream work. And then finally, we'll have a presentation by Becca with the Fish and Wildlife Service on the consultation process that's currently ongoing with U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Next slide, please. All right, so for some meeting ground rules, for the duration of the meeting, participant videos and microphones will remain off. Written questions about the project for the BLM, for Fish and Wildlife Service, or for Nevada Department of Wildlife can be submitted using the Q&A box. That's going to be found at the bottom of your Zoom screen. You may need to move your mouse around or press on your phone or a tablet screen to get that toolbar to pop up. You can submit questions at any time throughout any of the presentations, and we will be taking a slight pause at the end of each presentation so that if we do receive questions that are asking about any clarifications or are presentation specific, we can go ahead and answer those as we've just finished that presentation. And then if we do have more general project related questions, we will answer those at the close of the final presentation towards the end of the meeting. So a couple opportunities there for questions to be answered. And then during the meeting, if you do need any technical assistance with Zoom or you're having any issues with Zoom or otherwise, you can go ahead and reach out to us via the chat box. That's also going to be located on that Zoom toolbar. You can send a chat to hosts and panelists, and we'll reach out with some troubleshooting support. If you are having trouble with the chat, you can reach out to Megan Stone via email, and that email is megan.stone@aecom.com. All right, and we can go to the next slide, please. All right, so we'll now go ahead and go through some introductions of the staff that we have on today. First, I'd like to call Nancy to introduce herself.
Hi, I'm Nancy Army. I am a Planning and Environmental Coordinator at the Nevada State Office here in Reno.
Thanks, Nancy. We'll go on to Catherine.
Hi, I'm Catherine Dyer. I'm the Nevada State Range Program Lead for BLM Nevada and the project manager for this project.
Next up, we've got Patty.
Hi, I'm Patty Novak-Etchnik. I'm a range specialist at the BLM Nevada State Office.
And next up, we've got Nikki.
Hi, Nikki Cutler. I'm the hydrologist at the state office for BLM.
And Becca.
Rager with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service.
Cody.
Cody Byrne, Nevada Department of Wildlife, Eastern Region Fisheries Supervisor.
And finally, Megan.
Hi, I'm Megan Stone, Project Manager with AECOM, the consultant helping with preparation of the EA.
All right, thanks everyone. And I think we'll go to the next slide and that will start our first presentation. And Catherine, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today to talk about the grazing flexibilities, range improvements, and restoration to improve Lahontan cutthroat trout habitat in Nevada. This is an environmental assessment that's currently out in its public comment period. And so our desire today is to give you some information associated with this document that will make it more approachable and make it easier for you to be able to review this and provide us with the best input possible through this public comment period. So you'll see this many times, but my contact information, and we'll have Nancy's contact information later as well, and reach out if you have any questions. Oh, next slide. I was about to press a button. All right, so this, I guess the precursor to this project started, or this project, but not this EA, started in March of 2023. We initiated public scoping and had a variety of public scoping meetings and provided the information that we had at that time that we were starting to wrap our minds around for how to approach this project. And we got a large amount of really beneficial information back from that interested public and the permittees associated with that scoping effort in March of 2023. And so from that, we've had a large evolution of this project. We do, however, have some foundational pieces that are pretty much the same, and that is that we're still using the LCT occupied habitat layer from Fish and Wildlife Service. That's their 2022 data layer associated with where LCT were confirmed in stream reaches and lake systems. And so we use that as our foundation for developing the project area, and the 38 allotments that have LCT occupied habitat within them on BLM managed lands is represented here in this map. And so we do have habitat throughout 4 districts. We have the Elko District, Winnemucca District, Carson District, and Battle Mountain District, all included in this analysis. Next slide. All right, and with that, I will hand it over to Nancy to talk more about NEPA.
Thanks, Catherine. I'd like to also welcome you all to our meeting, and so we can chat a little bit about NEPA. Next slide, please. So we're going to talk about the NEPA process. Basically, where are we in the process? We're going to have a look at the summary of the proposed action and alternatives. We're going to look at issues identified and addressed, and that's going to be actually that's going to be over 4 slides because we had a lot of issues. Then we're going to talk a bit about participation in the NEPA process, and then how to provide substantive comments. Next slide. Okay, so here we are. This is our basic schedule. Here, this orange and gray box or gray table. So as you can see in here, we reinitiated the project in winter, this past winter. And basically what had happened was we had gone to scoping. We'd gotten a lot of good comments. And then, you know, we formulated the EA and the alternative, you know, we formulated and finalized the proposed action and alternatives, the issues, the purpose and need. And then we found, once we started reading through it and really started to think about it and think about how to implement it, we realized we had a lot of rework that we needed to do. We needed to revise the purpose and need statements. We had to revise the proposed action and alternatives. And then we also, so basically we revised the project. So we canceled the original e-planning page. And then when we were ready to engage again, and we had a better sense of the project, and we had revised the EA again, we created a new e-planning page, and that's what this is representing here, where it says reinitiate. Right now, we're smack dab in the middle of a public comment period. That's going to end June 15th. And then we are looking at, if it's appropriate, going to a FONSI in mid to late or mid-October to mid-November. So, so that's basically where we're at and where we're going. Next slide, please. So this is the summary of the proposed action and alternative, and there is a lot of text here. Basically what we're saying is that, and I'm going to start with the no action alternative. I know it's at the bottom, but I always like to start with that because that's your baseline. So the no action alternative for this project is current management practices. So that means the BLM would continue to administer, modify, and renew livestock grazing permits on an individual basis through the standard modifications or renewal process. So business as usual. The proposed action, if it's selected, would approve a protocol for determining grazing management and on-the-ground actions. And that would include range improvements, water developments, and restoration actions within BLM administered grazing allotments containing occupied LCT habitat. Those grazing management modifications would include stuff like changes to livestock use management and alteration to the flexibility of terms and conditions. And those would be based on monitoring results. The potential stream restoration actions would include, but there could be more, things like induced meandering and post-assisted structures. And those could include grade control and beaver dam analogs, stream bank stabilization, and in-stream restoration. Now, the action alternative is the same as the proposed action, except that it doesn't include the potential stream restoration actions. So what that means is the management tools used to reach the habitat objectives or to make significant progress toward habitat objectives would be solely through grazing flexibility facilitated by range improvements. So I'll let you kind of check that out for a bit. And then we'll move on to the next slide, please. So these are going to be our issues that were identified and addressed. And I don't know how familiar everyone is with issue-based NEPA. The analysis section looks a little different. It's going to have a lot of these questions. Well, it's going to have these questions. So for example, under fisheries, you've got like that second bullet there. How would riparian and in-stream restoration projects affect fisheries, LCT, and riparian habitat over the short term and also over the long term? So you're going to have those kinds of questions. Then you'll have, sort of a description of the analysis area and assumptions. And then you see and then you'll see your affected environment, and then you'll see the environmental consequences. And basically what we're trying to do is ask really targeted questions that get to the heart of maybe the issues with a particular resource like fisheries or botany. So the EA, when you review it, it's going to look a little bit different if you've never seen an issue-based NEPA document. The idea also behind issue-based NEPA is that it would streamline the analysis and make it maybe a little easier to read. So I'm going to let you have a look at this one, but we have, I think, 3 more slides or 2 more slides to look at. The good news is we're going to post these presentations on the e-planning site. So you can always come back and have a look at these slides when you've got some free time. So if we could look at the next page, please. So here we've got fire and fuels, hydrology, and livestock grazing. And so with livestock grazing, we've got that question: how would the proposed changes to range improvements and permitting flexibilities, complemented by restoration activities based on and tied to the protocol for classification and monitoring, affect the administration of livestock grazing or grazing operations? So that's pretty cool. We also have under hydrology, how would stream restoration strategy impact physical stream health? That would be the geomorphology, bank stabilization, and more. So if we could have the next slide, please. Okay, here we are. We've got soils, wild horse and burrow, and wildlife. So we have a question under wildlife. How would construction of range improvements and riparian and in-stream restoration projects affect wildlife and riparian-dependent wildlife, including threatened and endangered species, over the short term? And that would be related to equipment and disturbance, and over the long term. Okay, let's look at the next one. Okay, this is the last slide with all of these issues identified and addressed. So we're looking at lands with wilderness characteristics, wilderness, and wilderness study areas. So I'll give you a few moments to take a look at those questions. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, so this is the slide where we're going to talk about sort of how we're describing helpful or substantive comments. So those are going to be specific. They're going to provide, or they can provide new information relevant to the analysis, or identify a different source of credible research relevant to the analysis. So, that might be, maybe of another study that we could use in our analysis that maybe we don't have already. Or maybe you're aware of maybe some new monitoring techniques or something else, additional digital data sources. We would dearly love those. The other kind of helpful or substantive comment would be to suggest alternate ways to meet the project objectives. What else can we do? Is there another way to achieve the goals that we've lined out for this project? And of course, making factual corrections. So if we get something wrong, please let us know. Okay, and for non-substantive comments, those are the kinds of things where you sort of agreeing or disagreeing with policy, or maybe the comments don't pertain directly to the project or proposed project area, or they're in favor or against the proposal, but there's no explanation as to why, no sort of showing your work kind of thing. So yeah, it would be really fantastic if you could give us those substantive comments so we can use them. Can we get the next slide, please? Okay, so this is a lot of very tiny font, and it is basically saying, in the blue bordered box how to submit your comments. So we have two ways to do that. One of them is through the e-planning link, which is provided there. And then also we're accepting comments through the US mail, and we have that address provided below the e-planning link. Now, if you have any questions about the project, please reach out to Catherine Dyer, and her contact info is right there, or me at that email address, or at that phone number, or just go ahead and email the project at the email address you see here. And yeah, so that's if you would like further information or if you have questions. So I believe that is the end of my presentation. Can we have the next slide? And take it away, Patty.
All right, thanks, Nancy. Okay, this is going to be a brief presentation on the background of Roskin stream types and associated riparian vegetation and how this information can be used to determine management goals and monitoring priorities. Next slide, please. Okay, the Roskin stream classification was developed by Dave Roskin in the mid-1980s. It was developed to stratify and describe various stream types based on valley landforms and channel morphology. It can be used to predict a stream's behavior from its morphological appearance, assists in establishing potential and departure states, and provides a tool for setting objectives for restoration and rehabilitation. There are 11 valley types and 9 major stream types in the classification. And as you can see in the drawing, the stream types are letters and the channel substrate are numbers. The headwaters are usually A-type channels. And as you move down the channel, you have the valleys widen out and you have B channels and C channels and then D channels. Next slide, please. This is just an example. Here's Dixie Creek in Elko County going from a B channel and the valley widens out to a C channel. Next slide, please. Okay, there are 4 levels to the Roskin stream classification. The first level is a geomorphic characterization. So you can look at the slope ranges of the different stream types, and the letters down below indicate the different stream types. We had the Stringham Lab at UNR just do a desk exercise using a GIS and aerial imagery to come up with the types of stream channels that we've identified for the project. They were not able to tell if any of the channels were incised or entrenched channels, and those would be your F and G channels. Next slide, please. So here's the second level of the Roskin classification, which is based on the morphological description of the channel. So it includes the entrenchment ratio from the top of the stream bank to the channel bottom, the width to depth ratios, the sinuosity, how meandering they are. And then you can see the slope ranges and the channel materials. So the bedrock would be with a letter 1, and then silt and clays are down to number 6. So as you see the next few slides, I'm going to show you some different channel types. But I think that's it. Next slide, please. So the A and the A plus channels are very steep channels. Like I said, they're often in the headwaters. They can go up to 10% or more in slope. They're entrenched and confined step pool systems. They're very stable if they have bedrock or boulder dominated stream banks. And vegetation really does not control the stream banks. Typically, we have conifers, black cottonwood, tall willows, which are 6 feet or greater at maturity, aspens, mountain alder, and little grazing impact for the most part on these types of channels. You can see there's Lamoille Creek with a boulder bedrock channel bed. Next slide, please. Our B channels, they're moderately entrenched with slopes from 2 to 4, and they're more of a step pool system. You'll see in Cody's presentation with some nice pools. I think the channels he's going to show you are more of a B channel. They have stable stream banks, and vegetation is controlling depending on the type of vegetation. Typically tall willows, we could have cottonwoods or aspens on these. And grazing impacts can vary from medium to high. Next slide, please. Here's just Pole Creek. This was this spring with runoff. Could be a BC. It looks like the slope's a little gentler than a B channel, but it is a step pool system. Next slide, please. And then here's the big broad C channels. They have stream terraces or slightly entrenched. The slopes are less than 2%. Big, well-developed floodplains, and vegetation does control the stream banks here. They often have gravel bars and sandbars where willows and cottonwoods get their foot in the ground. They will, the seeds will land on these moist gravel bars, and they have no competition, so they can get their start there. This is a stretch of the Humboldt River in Elko. Next slide, please. And then, of course, our E channels are in very broad valleys, often associated with meadows. The very low gradient, slow moving. They have very well vegetated stream banks. Typically not with willows, though, because there's little deposition. They're more sedge brush dominated with some scattered willows in some areas. This was Maggie Creek in August of 2017. They're very sensitive to disturbance, but they have good recovery potential. So next slide. So along with the classification system, Roskin also develops succession scenarios. And so stream channels will undergo morphological change due to various disturbances and or recovery. So you can see on the right the different successional scenarios in each channel that can move from a C, become incised to a G, and then start widening out with an F. Starts getting some stable vegetation, developing the floodplain on a C channel, and then back to an E channel. So these successional scenarios are used to develop the riparian state and transition models. And you can see here's an example of a state and transition model, with state 1 being that potential, state 2 being more in size, and state 3 an incised channel, but much more stable again. So you'll be seeing more of that as Catherine gives her presentation. But what happens is as these channels degrade from a C to a G, they have a decrease in in-stream and overhead cover, a decline in pool quality, increase in sediment supply. Temperatures may increase and spawning habitat decreases. Next slide, please. So here's just an example. Here's Susie Creek, an incised channel that I believe was a C initially, went from a G and with incision and became widened with an F, and then back to a C channel. But this happened in the early 1990s with changes in grazing management in cooperation with the permittee, and it allowed the riparian vegetation to increase, which attracted beavers back to the area, and they built their little dams and ponds, and sediment was built up, and the riparian vegetation came back. Next slide, please. So we'll move to vegetation. So there's what's called riparian complexes. So you may have different stands of riparian vegetation associated with the stream channels. And as the channels move naturally, the vegetation will move as well. Next slide, please. So there's different plant community components. They're called colonizers and stabilizers. The colonizers are the first to establish on these open, bare areas as the stream shifts around. And they're typically rhizonomous or stoloniferous. These plants have shallow roots and weak stems. Examples of those are watercress and water buttercup. And I actually consider Coyote more of an early stabilizer or colonizer because it is rhizonomous and it does not develop the strong root crowns that some of the other willows do, which are stabilizers. We've got our yellow willows, mountain alders, and cottonwoods that come in along the green line. And next slide, we'll get into the green line. Al Windward from the U.S. Forest Service developed the green line stability protocol. You can see that the green line is defined as that first perennial vegetation that forms a lineal group of community types on or near the water's edge. And just looking at the green line gives a good indication of the stream bank's ability to buffer those hydrologic forces of water. And so there are ratings for the different community types that occur. And as you can see, the ratings range from 1 to 10, 1 being the least, 10 being the greatest. So our tall willow dominated community types range from 6 to 10, with coyote willow being the lower one at 6, and our Pacific willow a 9, which is more of a tree willow. The non-willow shrub dominate community types, say sagebrush and roses with a grass understory, range from 4 to 8. And then our graminoid types, Kentucky bluegrass, very shallow rooted species, is a low rating of 3, where Nebraska sedge is a rhizonomous sedge grass-like plant, and it has a 9. And then our cottonwood types range from 6 to 8. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'll just give you a little hint on the monitoring part of this. The appendices E and F in the EA document. We're going to be looking at some of these different measurements: the green line composition, our woody species height class, stream bank stability and cover, woody species age classes, substrates, and the type of pools that are there. So Catherine will give you more information on the monitoring that's going to be associated with that. And next slide, please. So you can see this is Appendix G, and she'll be going through this as well, but it's based on the stream stability ratings. We've got our stream condition goals, and our management and monitoring priorities. So you can see states 1 and 3 for the different types of channels. They have high stability ratings, and our goal would be to maintain those, and their monitoring priority is probably very low. Those ones that are in the state 2 that are actively eroding systems, they have low stream stability ratings. We would have a goal of improving, and our monitoring would be very high. Our priority would be very high. So that's just a quick update on some of our monitoring and our goals and objectives. Next slide. Okay, thank you. Turn it to you, Catherine.
All right, thank you, Patty. Do we have any questions for Patty before we move to the protocol analyzed in this EA? Okay, seeing none in the question and answer box. So this EA is a little different than many of the other EAs that you may have seen in the past. We are not analyzing a specific project. We are analyzing a protocol that will help us develop a variety of specific projects. And so it's especially important to pay attention to these protocol, which are all appendices of the actual analysis. And we'll go through those protocol now. Next slide. Okay, so there's 4 main protocol, and then there's a variety of things like required design features and other components that are appendices also. But the main appendices that comprise the protocol are the LCT stream type classification supplement, which Patty went over very well in the last presentation. And that's going to be the first step that that is gone through any time that this EA would be used to develop a site-specific project. And so we'll talk a little bit more about Appendix D, but Patty did a great job with that. So mainly what we'll focus on is the annual grazing use monitoring summary, and that's Appendix E, the long-term monitoring summary, which is Appendix F, and then Appendix G is the stream condition goals and objectives. And we'll also talk briefly about what implementation looks like with this project. Okay, next slide. Okay, next slide. We won't go through that. And you know, just to remind everyone, do look through the Appendix D. It gives a very thorough explanation of all of the components that were used to develop our stream type classification supplement for this. We don't have ecological site descriptions or state in transition models for riparian systems yet, and so we developed them. And Tamsin's lab was very instrumental to this process. And we had, for all of these appendices, it's worth mentioning that this was not, you know, a few people in a vacuum. This was a multi-agency partner approach. We had a variety of different specialists from BLM, from the state office as well as district offices. We had NRST, the National Riparian Service Team. We had USGS. We had Fish and Wildlife Service, NDOW, Department of Ag. We had a lot of really great minds collaborate to develop these appendices. Okay, further, or next slide. And so you start off with just a GIS exercise with, you know, topographic confinement and slope, things that are able to be recognized remotely. So you can see how this is kind of broken down, and then we have some of our site-specific data represented here. Those dots are AIM locations. So we have the data for those, and then we have a variety of also specific data, you know, the offices house. And so through all of that, we will be able to understand as we develop individual projects, what areas we might already be able to confirm the site, the stream classification type, and then what areas we might need to go to and get that site-specific information to confirm. Next slide. Okay, Patty covered this, so next slide. Next slide. Okay, and so Patty covered this as well, but what I want to just emphasize is, again, this is the E-channel state and transition model. And I just want to emphasize, you know, the state one being connected to its floodplain and having the necessary vegetation to maintain that. But then even within there, you have a high, moderate, or low stability rating based on, you know, like Patty was describing those different, like a sedge having a very high stability rating based on that 1 to 10 scale, and maybe a bluegrass dominated community having a lower stability rating based on that scale. And then our state twos being those entrenched areas that, you know, are devoid of a floodplain right now. They have not developed their inset floodplain, and so these are our least stable, our least resilient, and our most vulnerable systems. And then state 3 being, you know, once we have now connected again to an inset floodplain, and the degree of separation from the previous floodplain can be small to large depending, but to keep that in mind, and also to keep in mind that specifically these state in transition models and the grouping that we made. So we have, you know, C1 and 2 separated from C3 through 6 because of the amount of bedrock, or I'm sorry, B1 and 2 separated from B3 through 6 because of the amount of bedrock. I think I was right the first time. Because of the amount of bedrock associated, and so there's a different reliance on the vegetation community to hold that system together. And so we're looking at these specific to the impact of livestock grazing, of herbivory and hoof action on these systems, because that's specifically what we're analyzing in these in this EA. And so recognizing there's other disturbances in these systems, but this EA is focusing on the nexus of you know, the ungulates and the riparian communities. So that's how the groupings of those different Rosgen types were made in this instance. Go ahead to the next slide. Okay, so with that in mind, we won't go through all of this, but the major trends to recognize here are that, you know, we have three main annual grazing use indicators. We have stubble height, we have stream bank alteration, and on the next slide, you would see the woody browse species and actual use. Those are the things that we'll be collecting data on annually as appropriate. And you'll see, you know, like for stubble height in the A1 and 2 and B1 and 2 sites, we don't have any stubble height criterion associated with that because those are not systems that are held together with graminoids. And so we are not looking at that. And so then you can see we have, again, grouped according to how these systems similarly respond to disturbance and the different recovery potentials they have. And so state 2 of all B3 through 6, C, and E sites have a grazing use criteria of 6 inches on the key species and also require a growing season rest from livestock use until the stream bank stability rating of moderate or higher. And they have a higher frequency as well, requiring both monitoring within the livestock use period as well as post livestock removal for, you know, whatever the removal date is for that particular grazing season. Whereas when you have like a state 1 and 3 with a higher moderate stream bank stability rating, these are our more resilient systems. And so we have a more lenient grazing use criteria of 4 inches, and we're only going to be looking at after livestock removal. And so there's less, you know, less onerous conditions associated with that. The goal is to have this be able to be responsive, you know, to the conditions on the ground. And so, you know, we hear quite frequently that we are, you know, able to be sort of punitively responsive, but we want to be able to create opportunities to have beneficial responses for the operators when it's ecologically appropriate, right? So as those systems improve and can withstand different use levels, we want to already have built that mechanism in to be able to adapt the grazing management accordingly. And so please take a look at those and then go ahead to the next slide. And again, you'll see that we have these different components grouped with the different stream types, states, and conditions. And actual use reports would be needed in all instances because those capture the location, or at least at the allotment level or pasture level, and the you know, the season of use and the duration of use, which are very important components for any grazing strategy. Next slide. Another thing that people should pay attention to while they're looking at these protocol is this annual feedback loop. And so after grazing use has occurred every year, then there needs to be a conversation on how things worked. Did the grazing strategy get implemented as designed and desired? If it did it, you know, did it give the outcomes that were you know, that it was intended to, or if it didn't, then what went wrong? Was there livestock from the neighboring allotment perhaps that had made their way in there? And so all of these things need to be discussed in order to be able to have that adaptive management feedback loop, you know, successfully applied on any given year. And another thing to pay attention to in this figure, when you look at it in the actual document, there's a large amount of text underneath the figure where each one of these boxes has a, you know, a paragraph or so that really describes what the process is for that particular box that's summarized here. And so this is also the process that would be able to be used in order to take that site-specific data that you're collecting, both the long and short-term data, and to be able to modify those quantitative criteria as that site-specific data shows is appropriate for that particular location. And so we've provided the numbers that are based on the best science that we were able to compile and interpret through our large group of people. However, we recognize that things might vary from site to site as well. And so this would be the process that would allow us to make those site-specific modifications as data shows is appropriate. Next slide. And then we won't spend much time on this, but I just want to emphasize that, again, we have things broken out by the stream type, state, and condition, and that the monitoring frequency also, for the long-term monitoring, we have a greater frequency, a 3 to 5 year frequency for the state twos, or the low condition. It should probably say low stability rating here, but sorry about that. But so for those areas, you know, if we have a state 1 or 3 that has a low stability rating, I mean, the last thing we want to do, right, is lose a connection to a floodplain that we're currently connected to. And so those are important systems for us to increase the stability rating of while it's still connected to that floodplain, right? So those state 1 and 3 in low stability rating, and those state 2 in any condition are more frequent long and short-term monitoring intervals, because those are the systems that we either want to, you know, improve the stability. Well, either way, we want to improve the stability rating, but we're expecting these to be more dynamic processes. State 2, we're expecting, you know, to see the revegetation and see those dynamic changes in the system. And so the ones that are in currently resilient states, we're looking at a longer return interval, 5 to 8 years, because we want to keep our finger on that pulse, but we don't need to keep as close a look because it's functioning well. Next slide. And then this is just, you'll see when you look at the appendix, how many different things we'll be looking at. These are all covered under either the MIM, the multiple indicator monitoring protocol, or the LODIC AIM protocol. And so these are all collected, a large variety of data is collected in one suite of, you know, protocols applied in these different instances. Go ahead. Okay, and so now we are into the objective table portion, and this is a really large table in landscape view, and so we're looking at the first 5 columns, and then we'll look at further over in a moment. But you'll see again C3 through 6 in current state 1 or 3, high and moderate condition stability rating. We have the general needs for this particular Roskin stream type to be at proper functioning condition. And then we have those stream condition goals. So in state 1 and 3, high and moderate, we want mainly to maintain that, right? These are connected to their floodplain, and they have the vegetation that is holding that system together. And so next slide. This is different from the Roskin C3 through 6 in the current state 2, which is again our incised state that is devoid of a flood, an inset floodplain, has a low stability rating. And so our stream condition goals differ greatly here because we have a variety of improvement goals. These are general. Improve the green line composition to increase percent bank stabilizers, things like that that are fairly general. And these general stream condition goals can be made specific when we work on site-specific plans for implementation. Go ahead. Okay, and so here we are at the next 4 columns in this large table. And so we're back to the C3 through 6, state 1 and 3, high and moderate stability. So these are, again, our resilient systems. Livestock management actions, this is the most resilient state, and so it also has the most grazing flexibility available. We have restoration actions available. We're expecting them to be on certain locations within this because on the grand scheme, this is functioning. And so there's we didn't want to exclude the option for restoration actions, but we're not expecting this to be the priority for where we need the most restoration. Range improvements are available in all of the systems in all of the states as in order to facilitate the livestock grazing changes that could be necessary. And the short-term indicators, and then next slide. Okay, so state 2, again, this is our most vulnerable, least resilient system, and therefore it also has the least grazing flexibility available. As you saw in the short-term monitoring, this state has growing season use excluded until it reaches a certain stability rating, because it needs some love, right? Needs some time for those vegetation systems to establish. Restoration actions within this state are expected to be a priority. This is a state that can benefit greatly from some input of a variety of different restoration actions that Nikki will cover later. And then again, range improvements are available as they are able to facilitate those those changes in grazing management. And to answer Gary's question, and this won't answer it entirely because we're not addressing AML in this document. So horse gathers are continuing to happen, and we are, aspiring to reach AML in all of the HMAs. However, what we do recognize is that range improvements may be especially important in areas where we have that HMA LCT overlap, because we need to be able to provide those physical structures to manage those impacts also. So I know that wasn't a thorough answer, Gary, but that's sort of the approach to it in this document, is a further prioritization of available range improvements in those locations. Next slide. Okay, and then you can see here on the left, we have the state 1 and 3 in the moderate and high stability, and on the right, we have state 2. And just to recognize, like Patty was saying, if we can only manage and monitor in one location, we want to do it everywhere, but we're going to prioritize monitoring in these state 2s because these are, again, dynamic systems that are vulnerable and that are in recovery, and that we need to keep a closer eye on, right? So sort of how to prioritize resources that might be limited. Next slide. Okay, and so then we're going to get into implementation, and the most important part is to create these collaboratively. So with all this protocol, then we're going to sit down with the operator and we're going to work out, what systems they're managing on. So if we only have, so it says only components relevant to its allotment. If we only have an E channel in there, we're not going to talk about all the other channels because we don't really care what happens to the A channel if we're only managing an E channel in this allotment, right? And so we're going to figure out what we're dealing with at that moment in that time and location and build those general objectives into site-specific objectives. And through that, building that grazing management plan, we're also going to be including the necessary infrastructure and the potential restoration opportunities for that specific location. And those of you that have heard the talks about outcome-based grazing won't be surprised to know that we have included objectives, flexibilities, monitoring plans, and annual reporting. And so these LCT grazing management plans will include all of those components of a flexible authorization or an outcome-based grazing authorization specific to the LCT areas that are within those management areas. And we're not through this project looking at analyzing or proposing any changes to permitted AUMs, either up or down. Next slide. Okay, and then the annual reporting is a very important component to be able to ensure that we're really following through on adaptive management, right? So every year we'll be sharing the information with the permittees and the BLM, probably Fish and Wildlife Service too, and not probably, but we do that with all allotments, all authorizations that we are in consultation with, right? So they'll be a part of this conversation. NDOW is likely to be a part of this conversation. And discuss and share these monitoring results and the flexibilities. And again, going through that conversation that was in the short-term monitoring appendix that we went through earlier. And this improves that transparency and trust. And these will be integrated into that RAS, not that that really matters. So we can talk about that more later if you want, but next slide. Okay, and then again, just making sure that these objectives are achievable and measurable. And so that's why we've included, that's why it was so important to have a very strong stream type classification, because there's different objectives in each different stream type. And so we want to make sure that people are managing towards objectives that are achievable in the systems that they're working with. Next slide. And then those grazing flexibilities and strategies we'll talk about later on, but a list of the possible grazing actions and strategies that can be taken to maintain a trajectory towards attainment of resource objectives and multiple use objectives within an allotment or landscape, as well as operational objectives for those permittees. Next slide. Okay, and then the monitoring plan. So again, we have the short and long-term monitoring, and we do have the ability to adjust those based on those annual feedback loops using that site-specific data. And so this is the description of monitoring to track and confirm achievement of those objectives. And it includes the frequency of the monitoring such that, these results are available and actionable in relevant timescales. And so again, that's why our more dynamic systems are being monitored more frequently. Next slide. Okay, and so from all of this, now you have your LCT grazing management plan for a specific allotment. And we are developing a template, so it'll be, as short and concise as possible to tier to this one, to be able to just analyze that site-specific implementation plan, the grazing management plan. And then there will be a decision document specific to that LCT grazing management plan, and that will result in a permanent permit modification. And so that will be a change to their actual authorization to allow for these LCT grazing management plan terms and conditions to be, implemented for the duration of their authorization. Okay, next slide.
All right, and it looks like we did get one question, Catherine, that relates specifically to your presentation. So before we get into the Department of Wildlife, we'll answer this real quickly. The question is, are you encouraging permittees to monitor collaboratively? It varies by district within the state.
Yeah, we are absolutely doing that, Gary. And so we believe that collaboration is really useful to the relationship and to that shared management. And what this document will also result in is a statewide instruction memorandum that will give some of those instructions to the BLM users, as well as giving them the templates to be able to, carry those instructions forward.
Perfect, thanks so much. I think that was the only question we received for your presentation, so I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to Cody.
Sounds.
Hello, I'm Cody Byrne with Nevada Department of Wildlife. Going to be giving a brief overview on some of the habitat characteristics and requirements for LCT. Next slide. So a bit of background, LCT are native to the Lahontan Basin of Nevada, California, and Oregon. Throughout that wide range, there's several different life histories that have evolved during that time. There's resident fish, fluvial fish, which those are fish living in the stream and river systems. Adfluvial, those are fish that are living in a lake system and then moving into a stream for spawning, and lacustrine lakeform fish. And there are some unique localized adaptations associated with LCT. Many are familiar with their higher tolerance, their tolerance for higher water temperatures for extended periods of time. And then they also have a much broader spawning season than a lot of salmonids. We can see fish in the western part of the range spawning in February, out to the eastern part in Upper County. There can still be fish on reds in late June and July. Next slide. For the project area associated with this EA, the LCT populations are primarily resident and fluvial populations. So some of the characteristics associated with these life histories are spawning habitat is one of the critical habitat types for these fish here. These fish need clean gravels and very little fine sediments in there. Also need to have access to rearing habitats for the juvenile fish once they emerge out of the gravels. And then, as we've learned in recent years, overwintering habitat can be just as important as oversummering habitat. And those are the habitat types that are associated with those deeper pools where fish can seek refuge during the extremely warm periods of July, August, and September, and then also in the middle of the winter. That's critical during the low water periods going into winter when an anchor ice could start to form. Many are familiar with some of the limitations to LCT habitat and a lack of pool habitat, and large amounts of fine sand silts have been cited as limiting factors for LCT populations. Next slide. This is an example of some of that complex connected LCT habitat that we strive to manage for. This is Oregon Flat up in the Snowstorm Mountains on the south fork of Humboldt. You can see a tributary stream coming in from the left side of the photo, varied habitat in the middle, headwater stream looking towards the top of the photo there on the mountain, and then those large beaver ponds that are going to provide some of that refuge habitat. The darker green vegetation is some of the outputs from seeps and springs in that area that'll provide that continual cold water input during the hot summer months. Next slide. So in recent years, in some of our joint publications and publications that Fish and Wildlife Service have released and stuff, one of the things that we've strived for achieving in managing for LCT habitat is that characteristic of quality, quantity, and connectedness. And listed below here are a variety of different characteristics of LCT habitat that we're starting to manage for or improve in existing populations. Next slide. So next 3 slides are going to be some pictures of various LCT habitat that supports existing populations of LCT. This is up on the West Fork Marys River in Elko County, and you can see the tributary stream coming in from the left side of the photo. That's Jaws Creek. It supports a resident population of fish, and then there's also a fluvial population of fish in West Fork Marys that move into some of these smaller tributary streams for spawning. A couple of things to note in this picture and the next 2 slides following are those bright, clean gravels. And that's very important. You know, that's going to support a healthy macro invertebrate population and also provide access to those spawning habitats. You can also see developed stabilized floodplains on both sides of the stream bank here. Next slide. This is an example of quality pool habitat that we like to see on the LCT streams. On the right side of that pool, you can see a large undercut bank with that bank overhang. Those can be very fragile habitat types. They're susceptible to shearing from hoof action along there, but they're very important for providing cover for the fish. Again, dense canopy cover in here, and then those large deep pools that the fish are going to use in the summer months and winter months. Next slide. And then finally, this is a great picture showing LCT spawning habitat here. So looking upstream here in the picture. And if you look at the kind of middle of the picture there below the glare on the water, you can see that classic tail out in the pool there in those spawning gravels. So that's where the fish are going to make their red, lay their eggs. And then once those eggs develop and the fry hatch, they'll emerge out of those gravels and then move into those small slackwater areas on the side of the spring bank. Again, you can see those bright clean gravels, no fines in the pool and the tail out and riffle section downstream there. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, habitat is often cited as one of the limiting factors for existing LCT populations, or our ability to establish new LCT populations to achieve recovery goals and ultimately delisting. Some of the various things that can limit or negatively impact LCT habitat: big water diversions, grazing, wildfire, road crossings, extended drought periods that are putting stress on those habitats, a variety of other things that everyone's familiar with there. And in recent years too, we've really tried to figure out ways that we can blend restoration actions along with improving land uses in there. So it's not just a single focus on improving LCT habitats. Next slide. Obviously, the focus of this EA are methods that we can use to modify existing livestock grazing to improve the condition of LCT habitat, and then some of the associated infrastructure that's related to that ongoing livestock grazing. Fortunately, this is a picture that is familiar for a lot of northern Nevada streams here. We can see some of those exposed raw banks there that are a constant source of erosion, the hoof action and the bank alteration right up to the water edge and in the stream channel. Upland vegetation species right up there, and there's no way that this stream can access its floodplain without in size that it is. Again, you can kind of get an idea and a feel for all those ponds that are being deposited in this stream there. Next slide. So this is an example over in the Winnemucca district in Black Rock Range with Battle Creek, and the picture on the left was in the 90s, and then the picture on the right was in 2008, and then it has just continued to improve since then. If you look about the 1 o'clock position in that photo, you can see that rock outcrop in there, and you can see the sedge and rush community that has developed along that bank, and some willows starting to return and bank stabilize in there. And even in the last 15 years since that photo was taken, that bank has, or that stream has continued to narrow and deepen and supports a tremendous LCT population As Catherine mentioned in the earlier presentation, during this entire time, livestock grazing continued through this stream here. There was a lot of changes in seasonal use and writing and stuff in here. There's very little for water infrastructure on this pasture. Next slide. So as I mentioned earlier, there can be other impacts to LCT habitat. Wildfire can be catastrophic to existing populations. These are examples of two different LCT populations in Elko County that the habitat was in marginal condition, and then the fires went through and had some severe impacts to both these streams here. One of the reasons that we're trying to manage for those healthy, resilient riparian habitats is that green zone is going to be able to act as a fire break and really minimize the impacts of the fire if and when those do happen. Next slide. Habitat fragmentation is also one of the things that we're trying to address. I mentioned that connectedness earlier. Some examples of that can be road crossings and water diversions. The water diversions, both dewatering and then also creating actual physical barriers that are segmenting LCT populations. Road crossings can have several impacts. They can be a constant source of erosion into the stream. Then in examples like this on Jackson Creek, you have a wide, shallow stream area, and that's going to warm up, especially in the summer months there, and lead to increased water temperatures downstream. And then these wide, shallow areas in low water periods can also act as seasonal barriers to fish movement. That water is too shallow, warm, and broad, and the fish are not able to move through there. And they might need to be able to seek pool habitat that's upstream or downstream of there to get through those critical over summer and over winter months. Next slide. Oh, I guess that was the last one there. So can answer any questions now or at the end. And thank everyone for their time. And I'll turn it back to Catherine.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Cody. I'm not seeing any questions pop up yet, but you might be on the hook at the end. Okay, so I'll briefly talk about grazing flexibilities. And these are also really grazing strategies, right? So you need flexibilities in order to be able to develop a variety of strategies. Next slide. In both the proposed action and the action alternative, we have a variety of flexibilities that are mentioned specifically. And these are season of use alterations, changes in the class or kind of livestock, recognizing that, you know, something like a yearling is going to use the landscape differently than cow-calf pairs. So without maybe, you know, super dramatic changes, if depending on the operation, you know, they might be able to take advantage of some of those opportunities to run different herds in different areas. Changes to the pasture rotation. And so we did look also at adjoining pastures being able to change to complement, you know, a holistic grazing strategy. But that would be within the confines of any restrictions that are already brought forward. So like, we can't increase AUMs in another pasture, and we can't if it's already confined to, say it has I don't know, August, September, that'd be random, but August, September dates of use because of some other species that it's concerned about. In that pasture, we have not done the level of analysis to modify those things, but to the degree possible, we will be able to also change the dates so that, you know, pastures can rotate in a usable system. And earlier or later livestock on and off dates with, you know, that also coincides with the season of use alterations, implementation of rest rotation or deferment of pastures or allotments. And I'll say it later, but, you know, obviously all of these are things that are not applicable everywhere. It really depends on, you know, how many pastures, how many, like what different systems, you know, we're all working with at any given time. Altering that supplement placement to drive the to draw the livestock away from those live water areas, changing to the herding or the stockmanship to help move or distribute those livestock. Range improvements, including that offsite water development to provide water sources again away from those live waters. And then the uses of virtual fencing have also been analyzed within this document. Next slide. Okay, and so we have some very general strategies that have proven to be successful for grazing management in general, but for grazing management in riparian areas. And that's things such as avoiding grazing the same place every time year after year, or at the same time year after year, sorry. Provide for plant development prior to or plant recovery following the grazing period, and defoliate those primary forage plants only moderately. Provide for livestock needs throughout the year. Manage for maintenance or improvement of riparian area physical functionality, and assess riparian condition at a frequency that is adequate to enable any changes in management that are shown to be appropriate. Next slide. Okay, and so as all of you know, any grazing strategy is comprised of a variety of things, and really the timing, the duration, and the frequency are some of the most important components within that grazing strategy. And so limiting the grazing intensity, frequency, or season of use, thereby providing sufficient opportunity to encourage plant growth, regrowth, and energy storage and minimize the compaction of soils. Controlling the timing of grazing to prevent damage to stream banks, the transition area between wet and dry, and those meadows that can be vulnerable to trampling. And again, the timing of grazing, these soils in different systems might only be really inundated for some amount of the year, and so would be, have a seasonality that they're more susceptible to that hoof action. Ensure sufficient vegetation during periods of high flow. So even in times where we're doing solely dormant season grazing, we still want to have enough vegetation on that site to be able to do its job during the high spring runoff, right? To be able to trap those sediments and dissipate that energy and protect those stream banks from erosion. And then in some instances, intensifying grazing is a strategy that is really beneficial. And so that's commonly seen in situations such as riparian pastures, where you might not have a very long grazing season, but you have, maybe it's a gathering pasture, or, you have a larger amount of livestock for a shorter amount of time, and you're having, you're having, again, those impacts, but a short duration. Next slide. And so one thing that every grazing strategy has in common is that it's a combination of controlling the timing, the intensity, and duration, and then coupling that with an appropriate recovery period to be able to accomplish those site-specific needs and objectives. And so this is a pretty old table. Many of you are probably very familiar with it. And so we have here a variety of grazing strategies outlined in the left column, and then those grazing strategies and how they accomplish different stream riparian habitat objectives is depicted in the subsequent columns there. And so on the top left, we have continuous season-long grazing. And that is actually a grazing strategy, but it's not one that has shown to be successful for achieving these stream riparian habitat objectives, right? And so again, getting back to multiple slides ago, we don't want to be grazing the system the same time every year in the same way. And continuous season-long grazing does provide that sort of repetitive impact like that. Whereas we have something like a deferred rotation with cattle at the bottom of that left picture. And that can be heavy to moderate use, and it can still have a good to fair accomplishment of some objectives. And all of these too would have different impacts, right, depending on what system and state they're in terms of the stream type classification. And so, like we said before, more of these would be available, and it's not just these. I mean, the sky's the limit in terms of what grazing strategies, you can create when you're being, when you're thinking about timing, intensity, duration, and recovery periods. But this is a good example. And so many more of these are available in resilient systems than in the vulnerable systems, right? And so anyhow, this is also a appendix in the document and is referenced in there. Next slide. Okay, and remembering that recovery takes time. And so different components of these riparian systems recover at different time frames. So you're seeing your herbaceous vegetation having a quicker response than your water quality, right? That's sort of a lagging indicator or a lagging metric. And so you're looking at all of these components as appropriate to the particular system. And then, like we said earlier, you're able to adapt those management and monitoring criteria and strategies as your systems improve, recognizing that that they do take time to improve. And this is also, as Nikki will go into, this is a time frame that we can expedite through strategic use of some restoration, including some restoration options in different systems. Next slide. So distribution is super important for, for controlling or minimizing those impacts in certain areas. And some techniques that can be employed are offsite water developments that, again, that kind or breed of livestock. So different breeds use the landscape differently. And like we talked about earlier, the common example of the yearlings versus the cow-calf pairs and how they use the landscape differently. Season of use has been shown to have a really large impact on how livestock distribute across the landscape. And so we can use that for our best advantage also. Next slide. And again, the infrastructure to facilitate these management strategies. We didn't go into great detail because most of you are probably intimately familiar with infrastructure, but we have temporary and permanent fencing. We have riparian pastures, we have water gaps, we have exclosures, we have hardened crossings and some things that Nikki will talk about in restoration as well. Next slide. Okay, and so recognizing that, these grazing strategies need to be designed for the resource needs and for the rancher that's going to be implementing them. And that's why not one size fits all, because everyone has a different situation. And that commitment by the livestock manager is needed in order for these to be successful. And that's why they have to be developed collaboratively. And that we're recognizing as well that there's a learning curve, not just for the operator to get familiar with how to, do different management than they've been accustomed to, but also for the livestock to get accustomed to, using different places at different times and doing different things than they have gotten used to. And recognizing that if we can keep it simple, that everyone is going to have a better chance of success, because the more intensive the management strategy, the better chance of a mishap. And that we all need to be on the same page about the objectives and expectations, because then we will all be able to work towards those same objectives together. Next slide. Okay, thank you for your time. And I know I went a little over my time, so if you have any quick questions, and if not, we'll save them for the end. Thank you. Take it away, Nikki.
All right, good afternoon. I'll be covering restoration in this presentation. Next slide, please. So stream channels are self-maintaining over long periods of time, and eventually they will restore themselves to equilibrium. Restoration can alter the channel type by changing the morphology over a human timescale, with designs aimed at halting further downcutting while simultaneously initiating floodplain development, resulting in channel aggradation. Next slide. So here is table 2.2, the action alternative that includes stream restoration enhancements and grade control, beaver dam analog, stream bank stabilization, in-stream restoration, and induced meandering are some of the restoration actions that were included in the grazing LCTEA. Many riverscapes are effectively restored using low-tech methods. They're simple, cost-effective, hand-built solutions that help repair degraded streams. Process-based restoration is designed to kickstart processes that allow the stream to repair itself. All of these actions are tried and true, and including these tools in this EA is about having the ability to potentially apply them to degraded habitat conditions. Next slide. So here's a photo of a structurally starved stream channel that has incised, it has degraded riparian conditions. The channel is disconnected from its historic floodplain, which is now dominated by upland vegetation. And this would be a great reach for restoration actions. Next slide. This figure is highlighting key stages of stream evolution. Process-based restoration is a long-term endeavor, and there are often lag times between implementation and recovery of biota, and you may need iterative actions. This stream evolution diagram is going in not including restoration actions, so the timeline is in logarithmic scale, so we're talking about decadal, and then channel widening over hundreds of years, a grading and further widening in thousands of years, and then reaching a new equilibrium in the tens of thousands of years. So most often these are systems that respond very well to restoration actions, usually relatively low energy conditions. Next slide. So here's some photos of grade control where numerous one rock dam height dams along a gully are preferred to a few high dams. There is less danger of a washout, and if and when they do, less damage will result. They're more temporary than permanent. They have a more economical to grade the channel in stages with a series of low dams. The rocks can trap fine sediments, and then colonizers and eventually stabilizing vegetation can have a chance to get a foothold. Next slide. Here, beaver dam analogs, or otherwise known as post-assisted log structures, are hand-built with a mixture of woody debris and on-site soil and vegetation on first through third order wadable streams. This has the benefit of capturing fine sediments, allowing them to settle out upstream of the structure, and then vegetation can get a foothold with the water being available for longer. Willow may be braided through these posts, and fish and water can still get through. And so it's more of just slowing down the flow of water. Next slide, please. Attempting to stop a stream from meandering or stabilizing the stream banks without paying close attention to the evolutionary process can delay progress towards stability. For example, planting willow on both sides of a straight stream reach will inhibit the restoration process. In these photos, the deflectors enhance effectiveness with selective planting or removal of streambank vegetation. So in the photo on the left, a structure has been built partway into the channel to collect sediment where the bank has been sloughing. And so then vegetation has a chance to grow, and it diverts the water flow over to the opposite bank for some scour. So you will be over time introducing a meander or a bend in the channel. And then on the right side, baffles have been put in place that when the water's flowing down channel, captures sands and fine sediments. A point bar has been created, and that is a great place for cottonwood or willows to get established. Next slide. So here's a diagram of a Zuni bowl, which is an in-stream channel feature. This is to control head cuts. This structure is composed of rocks. It's lined step falls and plunge pools, and it prevents any head cuts from continuing to migrate upstream by dissipating the energy of falling water. Next slide. So why we want to engage in restoration actions is for maximal physical heterogeneity across the valley bottom, creating habitat for aquatic and terrestrial biota with physical complexity of in-stream habitat, increases channel floodplain connectivity, decreases peak flows, and increases base flows. You get channel aggregation and increased groundwater tables, restoring single-threaded channels to multi-threaded channels. Next slide. Since there's never one size fits all, having a large quiver of restoration tools will allow site-specific riverscape principles to be applied. Streams need space, structure forces complexity, and builds resilience. Recognizing stream types helps develop realistic expectations of its form and behavior. And sometimes inefficient conveyance of water is often healthy in terms of resiliency to drought, flooding, and elevating base flow. Next slide. These were key references used in the draft LCT-EA, and they're available either to download if you're interested or to purchase online. One thing to note is the National Operations Center for the BLM now has a staff hydrologist that is available to district and field offices for designing and implementing restoration actions. Next slide. I just want to thank you for your time, and I'll pass it off to Becca.
I'm Becca Frazier. I'm a fish and wildlife biologist with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I have been involved as a partner with this project since September, and I was asked to talk about Section 7 consultation, or working with other federal agencies on the Endangered Species Act interagency consultation process. Next slide. So first, I thought I'd give a quick background of the Fish and Wildlife Service and the Endangered Species Act in general, and then I'll dig more into Section 7. The mission of the Fish and Wildlife Service is working with others to conserve, protect, and enhance fish, wildlife, plants, and their habitats for the continuing benefit of the American people. And I just wanted to point out that the first part of our mission statement is working with others, because we recognize that building relationships and collaborating and learning from other people who are doing projects out on the ground is really the best way for us to actually have success at meeting the rest of that mission statement. Next slide. As part of the policy of the Endangered Species Act of 1973, It states that all federal departments and agencies shall seek to conserve endangered and threatened species and shall utilize their authorities in furtherance of the purposes of the Act. Next slide. And I think most people know that the Endangered Species Act establishes protections for fish, wildlife, and plants that are listed as threatened or endangered. And I'm going to dig into interagency cooperation here in just a minute. It also provides for adding or removing species from the list of threatened or endangered species, T&E species, preparing and implementing recovery plans for those species, cooperation with states, and even working with international partners on endangered species conservation. Next slide. I thought I'd also quickly go through a few definitions that get thrown around a lot when talking about the Endangered Species Act and consultations. This is how they are actually defined in Section 3 of the Endangered Species Act. Endangered is any species in danger of extinction throughout all or a significant portion of its range. Threatened is any species likely to become endangered in the foreseeable future. Critical habitat is specific geographic areas with physical and biological features essential to the conservation of a listed species. And take has a pretty long definition. It is to harass, harm, pursue, hunt, shoot, wound, kill, trap, capture, or collect, or attempt to engage in any such conduct. Harm is further defined to include significant habitat modification or degradation. Next slide. Okay, so Section 7, interagency cooperation. Section 7A2 states that federal agencies must ensure that actions they fund, authorize, or carry out. So, for example, the authorization of grazing permits on federal lands are not likely to jeopardize the continued existence of listed species such as LTC, Lahontan cutthroat trout, or adversely modify or destroy critical habitat. When evaluating the impacts of an action, that federal agency could determine that the effects of their action either have no effect on listed species or its critical habitat. And if there's no effect, then there is no requirement to consult with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, or they could determine that their project may have an effect on listed species or critical habitat. And that's what triggers consultation with Fish and Wildlife Service. Next slide. So if there may be an effect, there are two different effect determinations. May affect or not likely to adversely affect a listed species, or may affect or likely to adversely affect a listed species or the critical habitat. If the effect is expected to be discountable, insignificant, or wholly beneficial, then that would require what is generally termed as informal consultation, and the action agency would request a letter of concurrence from the Fish and Wildlife Service on that determination. In informal consultation, there is no take of a species anticipated, and so no exemptions for incidental take are needed. However, if the federal action agency makes a determination that their action may affect or is likely to adversely affect, either directly or indirectly as a result of that proposed action, then that would constitute formal consultation. And in that case, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service would analyze the effects and that project in a written biological opinion, and that may or may not result in exemptions for incidental take of a species. Next slide. It's beneficial when you think that there may be an effect for the federal action agency to start conversations with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service early. That way, early in the project planning, we can help make sure that species lists are appropriate and may be able to minimize those impacts in the project design. If it does look like there may be an effect, then it's still a good idea to keep consulting with us while writing a biological assessment, or BA, which is the document that'll be submitted during consultation. That way, while drafting that BA, when questions come up or if there's any concerns or issues, Fish and Wildlife Service has already been talking about how to answer those questions. And once that BA is actually submitted for consultation, there should be much less surprises, and it should be a complete biological assessment, leading to a much quicker process for us to be able to create a letter of concurrence or a biological opinion. But it's important to note that consultation doesn't end at the with a letter of concurrence or a biological opinion, but also that monitoring, reporting, and adaptive management are incredibly important as well to make sure the project is going down the intended path. And the Bureau of Land Management with this project, with the LCT flexibility EA and the actions that are involved within that, they have been holding ongoing meetings in which the Fish and Wildlife Service and several other partners have been involved in those since before I even moved to Nevada. So we definitely appreciate that. And as you have seen in some of these past presentations, the monitoring and adaptive management part is a huge piece of this EA and this action. So that is already being, a lot of effort is being put into that, which is great. Next slide, please. There are two types of consultations when an action agency thinks that there may be an effect. There is project-specific consultation, in which case the federal action agency has all of the information, the who, what, where, how of a project. They can provide that in their BA to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And in the event of a may affect and likely to adversely affect call, we can write a biological opinion, which could have exemptions for incidental take. Or there is a programmatic consultation, in which case a federal action agency could provide the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service with a programmatic biological assessment, which includes much of that information, but they might not have all of the specific details of the where or the how yet, in which case we can analyze the bulk of that project. We can identify in collaboration with the action agency and those involved, we can identify sideboards to help provide guidance and limits to help conserve listed species or critical habitat. But we cannot give any sort of exemption for incidental take because we don't know all the nitty-gritty details of the project yet. However, once those specific details come in, then we can tier a biological opinion underneath the greater programmatic consultation that includes all those specific details, geographic location, specific management, whatever those details that are missing are. And in that case, we could issue exemptions for incidental take. Next slide. And in the case of this, the actions being proposed under and the process being proposed under the LCT flexibility EA, this could be a good candidate for a programmatic consultation because a lot of information has been developed. There's a lot of good information here already, but there are things that need to be worked out with each specific permittee. And once we know those specific details, we could tier a biological opinion with exemptions for take underneath the broader programmatic consultation of the greater project. Next slide. And I tried to be succinct and go through that fairly quickly, but I am very happy to answer any questions that come up. And thank you all for listening. Appreciate it.
Great, thanks, Becca, and thank you to all our presenters today. That will wrap up our presentation portion of the meeting, and we'll go ahead and move into our question and answer session. So on the screen now, we have the visual guidance of how to submit a question, but if you go to the bottom of your Zoom screen and click on the toolbar, you'll see the little Q&A box pop up. You may need to toggle your mouse around or press on your phone or tablet screen to get that toolbar to pop up. But once you have that Q&A box open, you can go ahead and type in a question, and that will send it to us, and then we'll go ahead and provide you with an answer. I know we've got a couple questions throughout the presentations that we answered kind of as we went, and I haven't seen any come through to answer right now. So we'll give it a few minutes. If you do have questions, like I said, please feel free to route those to that Q&A box, and we are happy to answer those. So we've got about 15 minutes left in our meeting time today, so we'll hang out and see if we get any questions.
Okay, so as you are feverishly writing your questions in, which I don't see yet, but we'll keep waiting for them. We'll go ahead and answer. We had a couple questions that were provided online, you know, when registrants registered for these different sessions. So Allie, if you could read the question having to do with the off-road enthusiasts.
Yeah, definitely. Let me pull that up. So one of the questions we received earlier was, can you please describe the engagement between the authors and the off-road community? I think authors meaning the environmental assessment authors.
Right. And so the response to that question is that a variety of, you know, all of the different ID team members were contributory to this analysis. And so we did have the state office recreation specialist who represented the off-road, you know, contingency. And then if any off-road recreationists are registered interested public, then they would have received those outreach as well. All of the interested public of record for all of these different allotments are you know, did receive all of the written communication for the scoping and for all of the work that has been done so far.
Great, thanks,
Okay,
Catherine.
and it was Gary McEwen that had the implementation question. So will implementation be the same throughout all affected just districts in the state? If not, how do we address the discrepancies? And so, like I said, Gary, part of what will be developed to assist with implementation of this is a statewide instruction memorandum, or I guess not statewide, just for the 4 districts with LCT, but an instruction memorandum that will also have a variety of templates associated, like the short form EA that will be used to analyze those LCT grazing management plans. And that instruction memorandum will also include direction on how to receive applications and how to proceed with the process. And so the whole goal of this is to have a consistent and efficient approach to all of these projects. And Patty already left, but I think we can probably answer this one for you, Sherm. A pasture with multiple stream types and the major issues are in limited reaches. And so is reach prioritization step part A of this EA. And so the reach prioritization is a component of that stream type classification, because as you are recognizing and classifying those different stream types and states, you are also then earmarking the ones that are vulnerable or need that additional management. And so then you're able to focus your actions in order to address those sites that are in most need of the actions, right? And so I'm not sure if that answered your question, but.
Yeah, and if we need more clarification, or if the asker of that question wants to resubmit, feel free to do so. We have a little less than 10 minutes or so, but those were all the questions we've received so far. So I'm wondering, Catherine, do we want to maybe walk through the e-planning webpage while we still have a couple minutes left and haven't received any additional questions?
Sure. And so we'll go ahead and just look through the e-planning webpage, just because this is a large PDF, and so we want to make sure that you guys have the most comfort in addressing it as possible. If duration can be tracked with dates of use, can a shorter grazing period allow a higher use intensity level? And so those are things that that can be developed on that site specific, in that site specific grazing management plan. And so those would be things that would be able to be developed collaboratively with the service as well as the permittee, to ensure that we can, again, because all of those grazing strategies, right, have the timing, duration, and intensity, but they also have that recovery period. And so negotiating those different components together to create those successful strategies, and recognizing that we have that adaptive management process in place so that we'll be able to work with the permittee to modify that as is needed throughout the process. Okay, so they have pulled up the e-planning page here. And so in order to provide comments this way, and you can do it by written mail also, but you would just press on that green Participate Now link, and that will take you directly into the comment, into comments. And so you can write in your comment there, and then on the bottom left, you'll see that upload files. And so maybe if you want to, provide us with a reference that we had somehow missed throughout the creation of this document, then you can just drop that reference in there for us. And you can come back to this comment form as many times as you want. So you don't have to write all your comments out and then have them all at once to go through this. You can come through this through your, iterative review of the document. And Nancy did remind us on the previous call that If you do that, that's fine, but please remember what you've already commented so that you're not providing the same comment again. And then if we go back to the other page, okay, and then if you click on that blue document name link there, then that will bring up your extensive EA here, which is about 300 pages long. And then if you click on the top left there, where her mouse just was, that'll drop this down. And then if you click, see how she has on the left there, just to, there's the two boxes just left of her mouse and the bottom one is highlighted. And so you would need to click that in order to bring up this cover. And then when you click on cover, it'll drop down with all of your different sections of the document, which are hyperlinked. And so that way, if you just want to go in and jump right to one of the appendices, like you really want to go look at what this stream type classification supplement in Appendix D is, you can just click right on that and jump right to that portion of the document. And so if you leave that open while you're reviewing this document, that gives you the ability to navigate around in it pretty efficiently. And that's about all I have for e-planning. So
Right, well, we, yeah, just have a couple minutes left here and I haven't seen any additional questions come in. But maybe we'll go ahead and review this final slide and then that'll put us right at the end of our meeting time. Do you want to go over the commenting information, Catherine? Or...
oh, more? Okay, sure. So again, Nancy gave a great overview on what a substantive comment or substantive comment is. And so, you know, we'd love to get all the constructive feedback we can, the substantive comments to help make this the best document that it can be so that it's the most useful that it can be for everyone. And you can provide those, like we said, through actual physical mail to the Nevada State Office, make it attention to the BLM Nevada Grazing for LCT. Or you can provide it virtually through the e-planning site that we just looked at. And always feel free to reach out to myself or Nancy Army with any questions that you might have during your review. And we just really appreciate your involvement with this project and your commitment to how we can all contribute to making, you know, livestock grazing and LCT habitat as successful and compatible as possible.
Great, thanks, Catherine. And we'll hang out for another minute and a half or so till we hit that 6 o'clock Pacific time. And then we'll go ahead and close out the meeting. So thanks everyone for joining and for your engagement today.
Okay, so it looks like we are just about to hit the 6 o'clock mark. And Alicia, thank you for joining us. And we're glad you liked the presentations. And so thank you all again so much for the wonderful contributions to this.